All right, let's dig into this with retired Rear Admiral John Kirby. He's here with us now to discuss this war in Ukraine. He's the coordinator for strategic communications at the National Security Council. Admiral, it's good to see you again.
Thank you very much.
So how might this mobilization of more Russian troops affect the war?
It's difficult to know exactly what the impact's actually going to be on the battlefield. 300,000 is the number that they put out. I think it remains to be seen whether they're actually going to be able to muster that number, and then, of course, what they do with them and where they put them in the field of battle, the kinds of capabilities that they might provide. Obviously, we don't want to see any more soldiers committed to this fight. This war ought to end. It should end tomorrow. But short of that, we're going to make sure that we can continue to support the Ukrainian armed forces in the field, give them the weapons and capabilities that they need, not only to defend themselves, but to continue to take back territory that rightfully belongs to them.
How should we interpret Russia's move, this move of calling up 300,000 more troops? Clearly, you know, Russians aren't too, or at least some Russians aren't too happy about it. So it certainly seems like it's a bit of a risk. What should we take away from it?
I think it's one of the clearest indications that we've had in quite some time that Mr. Putin understands the struggles that his military is experiencing on the battlefield, the losses, the failures, the constant push that they have been under pressure they've been under by Ukrainian armed forces, particularly in the east and in the south. So clearly he understands he needs to commit more forces to it because he's not winning, because he is struggling on the battlefield. And I think the other thing to your other point of your question is obviously now it's become much harder for him to keep the truth from the Russian people. Mobilization was something that we know he wasn't looking forward to having to do because there's no way to hide it anymore, that they are struggling and that they need additional manpower. And now you're starting to see the Russian people react to that news themselves, that they haven't been told the truth about what Mr. Putin is doing in Ukraine, and now it is going to have a stronger, bigger impact on them and their families.
So, Admiral, as you know, the president appeared on 60 Minutes recently, and he was asked about U.S. aid to Ukraine. I want to play a bit of what he had to say.
Ukraine, through the significant help we and our allies are giving them, and the incredible bravery and the incredible determination of the Ukrainian people, are not losing a war, and they're making gains in certain areas. The price the Ukrainian people are paying for this war is extremely high, but we're going to stay with them as long as they need our help.
You're already north of $15 billion in terms of those commitments. How far do you go?
As long as it takes.
So, Admiral, the president says as long as it takes. I also wonder how we're keeping track of the billions of dollars the United States and other countries have given to Ukraine. We obviously know that it's meant for weapons and meant to defeat the Russians, but how do we keep tabs on all that money?
Well, I think it's important to remember a couple of things. When the security assistance, the weapons and material gets into Ukraine, it becomes Ukrainian property. It belongs to them, and we don't dictate to them where and how they use it. It's their material. That said, and we have shared concerns with our Ukrainian counterparts, who obviously share our concerns about proper accountability. We don't want to see any of these weapons or systems end up in the wrong hands. The Ukrainians feel the same way, and so we are working closely with them to see if we can do a bit better job in terms of oversight and making sure that we have a clearer picture. But I want to stress, this is a war. This is an active war, and most of these weapons and systems are being used very, very quickly. As soon as it gets into Ukraine, it's getting to the field. Obviously, they reserve some things, they store some things. They have to do that, but they are using this equipment with great effect, as the president said in that interview, against Russian forces. And our systems, our capabilities, are definitely making a difference on the battlefield.
You know, Ukrainian President Zelensky addressed the assembly yesterday, too, and he called on Russia to be recognized as a state sponsor of terrorism. He said that Russia is using diplomacy just essentially to buy time and asked that Russia lose its veto power. Let me ask you, is there the will, the desire, the interest among Western allies in the U.S. to diplomatically isolate Russia?
Russia has already been diplomatically isolated. I mean, think about the vote here in the UN, more than 160 nations coming out and publicly condemning what Mr. Putin has done in Ukraine. He is isolated. He has become more of a pariah on the international stage. Look, the president talked about the need for Security Council reforms to be more inclusive, particularly of countries in Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean. We're looking forward to working with our UN colleagues on seeing these reforms actually take shape. But right now, We are focused on making sure that Ukraine can defend itself against this Russian onslaught. And clearly, we know that the sanctions and export controls are having an effect on Mr. Putin's ability to prosecute this war, particularly when it comes to microelectronics for his precision-guided munitions. So he is becoming further isolated from the rest of the world. Look, I mean, just last week, you saw the leaders of China and India publicly express their concerns about what Mr. Putin is doing in Ukraine. And I think that was noteworthy.
Admiral, let me turn your attention to something else the president said yesterday in his speech. He reiterated that the United States would not allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons. Negotiations over reviving a 2015 Iran nuclear deal are reportedly stalled. How does the president and other UN members plan on preventing this without that diplomatic treaty in place?
We're going to keep trying to get a diplomatic path forward. The president does believe that that no problem in the Middle East gets easier to solve with Iran having a nuclear weapon. That's why he's committed to making sure that outcome never happens. He would prefer to do this through diplomacy. He would prefer to be able to do it through getting back into the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran deal as it's called. And right now we're at a stage where we're pretty far apart from the Iranians, and it's unlikely that we're going to get resolution anytime soon. But the president has also been clear that he's not going to take other options off the table. We prefer the diplomatic path. Our diplomats are still going to pursue that path, but right now it doesn't look like we're going to get there anytime soon.
Admiral John Kirby, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.